There's a lot going on in the world right now, and the need for great leadership is higher than ever. So, where do you start? Right now, I recommend you start with listening. And today, I'm going to offer some tips on how you can listen just a little bit better. Welcome to the Leadership Coaching Group's podcast. I'm your host, Liz Howard, an entrepreneur, author, and executive leadership coach. This is where I introduce you to the top experts that discuss the burning topics that leaders at all levels need to know about. My goal is to help you become a leader that you are confident others will want to follow. So, subscribe to the show, listen in weekly, and watch your confidence as a leader grow. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. In light of the current events that are defining the year 2020, I wanted to talk about the deeply important skill of listening. With some organizations preparing to allow more of their workforce back on site, to the much needed conversations about anti-racism, our workplaces need leaders that can truly listen and truly be conscious when creating the vision and execution of that vision amidst such change. I just want to start by telling you, I'm actually kind of excited about the opportunities for leadership right now. I know it's going to be hard, and I know there's a lot going on. But for those of you leaders that really know that you are a heart-centered leader and that you're driven by your passion, there's so much going on where you might really be able to shine right now. If you have a heart for really taking care of others, for hearing their voices, for empathy, for relating to coming from certain backgrounds, to having to have managed delicate illnesses, there are so many opportunities for really great leaders to step into their own right now. So I know it's a lot, and I know that it's not all going to be perfect, and it's not all going to be easy. But if you've been waiting for your time to shine, this very well might be it. And I am so excited to see what kind of really amazing leaders stand up, raise their hand, and just start showing up right now. And I'm just thrilled to be part of this journey with you. So let's dig in a little bit to the conversation surrounding this topic of listening. We've talked about it a million times on this show. You've heard the stats, right? That people leave their job because they're really trying to leave their manager. But the reason they leave their manager is because they feel like they're not listened to. It's a big deal. People need to feel heard. I had this conversation presented in a very interesting way just a couple days ago. Someone said, if you're at a human rights rally, and say it was for women's rights, and someone was like, but also we want to talk about the importance of the lives of polar bears. And I mean, obviously, they're just trying to stretch a little bit and say, we want to talk about this other issue. Of course it's important, and of course people care about it, but they're missing the heartfelt anguish of someone that's trying to say, hey, here's a way that I've been marginalized or I've been hurt, and I need to talk about it. I need to see change. I've seen this happen time and time again as a leadership coach, and honestly, just as a friend to people who work in the corporate space. If you feel like you're not listened to, if you feel like you don't belong, if you feel like you can't make an impact in the place that you're in, especially when you want to, it's like, what's the point? Why am I here? And for organizations, that's a really big deal for a whole lot of reasons. Because one, you should know your core values as an organization. And I pray that one of those core values is taking care of your people. Because people are giving an amount of their lives to an organization. Usually, it's much more than 40 hours a week. So we need to listen to our people. We need to care for our people. We need to acknowledge the fact that, hey, we're investing in them and they have corporate knowledge and they have experience. And for those that really want to contribute at a high level and be involved in the next thing, it's worth stopping and listening to them. So let's just review that point. People often leave their work to leave their manager, but they leave their manager because they don't feel heard. So, a skill that almost everyone in the world can work on is listening better. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So, how can you really improve your listening skills? It feels like it should be something innate, right? And I've made this comment before. I think it's funny. I'm going to say it again. Just like everyone thinks that they are an excellent driver, almost everyone thinks that they're an excellent listener. And I get that line from Oscar Trimboli. He was on the podcast a while back. I will link to his show because this is a really, really important episode for you to review right now, because he talks about the art of listening in this like really sophisticated and beautiful way. But it made me laugh when he said that, because everyone complains about how bad other drivers are around them, right? Like, this person's going too slow, or this person's too aggressively tailgating me, or whatever else. It's always someone else's fault. It has nothing to do with us, right? All the other drivers out there are terrible. And when I hear people talk about the way that others are involved in conversations that they have, it's always that the other person isn't listening. And listen, I get it. Especially with interpersonal relationships, I have to raise my hand and say that I'm totally guilty of this from time to time. Absolutely. It feels like I make perfect logical sense. Why aren't you getting what I'm saying? This is totally reasonable. But the way it comes out and the way that you show up during the conversation probably doesn't feel ultra reasonable all the time to the other party. So it's one of those skills that we can always sharpen and we can always work on. So let's explore a little bit about how. If you've listened to the show long enough, you probably know where I'm going to start with this. And I'm going to say that I want you to think about the end goal, where you're trying to get before you even go into any conversation with your employees in your workforce. Now, this point was definitely communicated by someone that I greatly respect, a communications expert and a multi-million-dollar CEO, Mary Shores. I had the pleasure of interviewing her once again. She's been on the podcast more than once, but we did a really, really fun video webinar together. And if you want to see it, she was talking about how to improve your communication skills when you're feeling overwhelmed. Just go to TLCG, the Leadership Coaching Group, tlcgwebinar.com, and you can sign up to jump into this webinar. We're talking about how to have better communication, how to hardwire your brain for happiness, and how to lead the life that you want to live in times of overwhelm. So Mary, as a communications expert, actually said this exact same thing. She said, think about the end goal that you want to achieve before you even start the conversation. And this is so important. It's really easy to go into a conversation with someone and be defensive, to be judgmental, to have something more to say. And here's the thing. If you really want to learn about where someone else is coming from, if you really want to understand them, and right now, listen, leaders, you need to do this. We all do. It's not a question mark. We all need to do this with our workforce. So the right mindset is to go into it with curiosity, without judging, without justifying where your viewpoints come from. We're just going to go in there and really try to understand where our people are coming from. Now, this sounds really easy, but how many times have you just flopped or ended up taking over the conversation? It happens all the time. So there are some really basic things that you can do. I know this is going to sound rudimentary, but I challenge you to do every single one. First and foremost, before you're having those really important, really hard conversations with your employees, I want you to get a good night's sleep. If you're exhausted before you're doing this, there's no question in my mind. And again, if you listen to the show, you know that I have a little baby in the house. I'm tired all the time. This podcast isn't going to be my best one ever. It just isn't. I'm really tired as I'm recording it right now. And I know that if I had to have a really challenging conversation, this would not be the version of me that could do it. I just wouldn't be able to do it as well. So you need a good night's sleep, ideally a couple in a row, but again, I have a 6-month-old, so that's asking too much from me right now. But if you can, be really well rested. Try to find a quiet space. Many, many, many of us are working from home right now. And many, many, many of us have other people in the house that need us, that are distracting us, that, are popping into the office. Try to find some quiet. I'll tell you a funny story. Right now, it's almost impossible for me to do that. So either I have to kick everyone out of a certain part of the house. Right now, it's probably kind of echoey because I have to record in our living room. We have high ceilings, it's loud in here, and it's a huge inconvenience to my family to have me here right now because this is like the center of the house. Other times when I can't do this, I'm in my car or in my closet. And those are two of the best places that I can go when I have to have really important conversations. Seriously, I lock myself in the car or I close the door to my closet, and that's where I have some of my really important conversations. And I want to challenge you to think about where you can find the quiet, cut out the distractions, and be really, really present when you're having these hard conversations. Also, think about the ways that you can keep yourself centered throughout a conversation. So, hey guys, I want to pull you back into the podcast right now if you're multitasking, and I know you probably are. And this is what I'm talking about. How are you going to recenter? So right now I'm trying to use some verbal cues to pull you back into what I'm saying because it's kind of easy to tune things out. So for me to do that, when I'm on the receive mode of a conversation, I write a whole lot of notes. It's very rare that I go back to my notes. I've done it, of course, on certain occasions, but generally I'm writing just to keep myself present, to keep myself aware of what's going on, and to stay really centered. For other people, that wouldn't work. So you know you best, but find a way to keep yourself centered and present in conversations so that you're not thinking about what to say, you don't get distracted by the noises in your house, things that you have to tend to, things that you forgot about yesterday. Find a way to bring yourself back in. And I'm asking you, hey, come back into this conversation right now. Stop the multitasking. Think about what could keep you centered. Maybe it's turning off the notifications on your cell phone. Maybe, again, it's putting on noise-canceling headphones or locking yourself in your closet if it's not too small. Whatever it takes, just find a way to keep yourself centered. Here's another funny adage that I've heard before, that we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It's because we're supposed to listen more than we're supposed to talk. And as someone who often has a lot to say, I know that that's true for me. I heard this fun little breakdown of the word wait, and someone said that it actually stands for, why am I talking? Ouch. And that's exactly something I want you to keep in mind when you're having those really important conversations with your workforce. Why am I talking right now? Why do I feel like I need to interject my own words when, again, I told myself I was starting with this end goal in mind of just being curious and listening to my workforce. So why do I feel like I need to talk right now? Sometimes you absolutely should. There is this conversation about active listening, and I don't want to disregard that because you should clarify. You should be present. I kind of am challenged extremely by this whole notion of being muted because I don't think that you can have those really deeply important conversations that you need to have if you're not talking at all. Sometimes you're going to need to ask a question. Sometimes you're going to need clarification. Sometimes you're going to need to say, I don't get it, and that's okay. So there are times, I believe, that you should still be talking. However, there are also times that you really shouldn't. For example, I think some of the really best-hearted people in the world have been taught to prove their solidarity and say, hey, I hear what you're saying. Here's a time that I went through something so similar. And here's what that does. That makes the other person stop talking. If that other person is an empath, they're going to put their issue 100% aside and they're going to want to support you. They might feel like they've been talking too much and now it's their turn to listen to you, and they might not have had a chance to get their main point out. So sometimes you might want to consider whether or not it's the right time for you to be chiming in whatever you're considering saying. Again, that active listening, that clarification, asking questions to go a little bit deeper, all good stuff. Throwing in your own stuff, I don't know. It depends on who the person is and what the conversation is, but you might want to challenge yourself to just wait and put that part on the back burner just for now. And finally, I want to give you permission to totally mess up. Because here's the thing. If you're doing something new, the fact of the matter is you might trip up. Some of the conversations as a leader that you're going to have right now are really big and they're really important. You probably know that, and you probably care so much that you don't want to mess up. The problem is if you overthink it and you're striving for perfection instead of just showing up and being there and being present and being human, then you're missing it. It's not a reason to avoid communicating because you might not do it perfectly. I'm going to tell you something. You're not going to do it perfectly, okay? So now that that's out there, let's just move past it and agree that showing up and having responsible, well-intentioned conversations really, really matter. That is the type of leading from the front that we need right now. Again, go back to the very, very first point. You have to know what it is you're trying to accomplish. We talk at TLCG all the time about knowing your core values and leading by those core values. So this is something that we're encouraging you to do in the very important act of listening. Know what your core values are and know what you're trying to accomplish. And you're going to try to keep improving and keep taking it to the next level and really, really serving your company and your employees, because that is good leadership. All right. So do you feel totally overwhelmed? I think I would too. And that's why I put together a webinar on managing overwhelm. I will say that I had working moms in mind when I created this, but it's applicable to absolutely anyone. As a leader, not only are you leading others, not only are you leading organizations, but the big thing is to remember to lead your own life. So I was lucky enough to have two amazingly inspirational and strong women by my side to talk about how to manage communication and how to manage your own personal happiness. And then, of course, I'm in there to talk about how to manage your own perspectives in leading your own life. I put this together realizing that an awful lot of us felt like we were drowning in the middle of this whole pandemic. And I have to tell you, after talking to the communications expert, Mary Shores, and the happiness expert, Ellen Leantz, I realized at the end of the day, I created this for myself, but I hope that it serves you. I think these are some high quality conversations. It's 100% free. And I hope that you will come on in, register for the webinar, and just listen to these really powerful conversations. I know you're going to get something out of it. So if you're interested, please head on over to a website that I made just for this. It's www.tlcg, as in the Leadership Coaching Group, webinar.com. tlcgwebinar.com. We're talking about how to manage overwhelm and how to lead the life that you want. I'm really proud of this. I think it's going to help you. I hope that you'll sign up for it. All right, guys. So in summary, we're talking about listening. We're talking about knowing what you want to accomplish before you go into those conversations. The importance of understanding why you're talking when you're having those really hard conversations, and also to understand that you're probably not going to get it perfectly, but that's okay. You're going to keep showing up. You're going to keep leading. That is what this leadership journey is all about. I hope this was helpful to you. Please head on over to tlcgwebinar.com, join our webinar, listen to some really high quality conversations. I think you'll feel a lot better afterwards. All right, guys, that is all for this week. Until next time, bye-bye. Hey guys, if you're getting anything out of this show, please head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. I read every single one, and honestly, your feedback is single-handedly what keeps this show going. So go to iTunes and let us know you're listening. Thank you so much for being a part of our community.